Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:33. I know you all are very busy individuals, so we won't take too much longer starting because I know, you're all busy. There's a lot of houses out there that need selling, a lot of things that need doing. So good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar. My name's Tom Jeffs. I already know some of you. Director, trainer and coach at Changing Minds Kent. As many of you know, Changing Minds Kent is working with Miles Barr, and we have done since 2019. And we've partnered together. Why? Because we're looking at improving the well-being of people in the community and also people inside the company, inside Miles and Barr. So this is just a webinar, it's a one-off special. It's been organised by Lauren and Laura. Thank you very much, Lauren and Laura. Just the timings of this presentation, about 45 minutes. And then that should hopefully kind of give us 10-15 minutes for questions afterwards. If you do have questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat function, or you can raise your hand virtually or physically and we'll unmute you and we'll get your question from you. Now, the other thing, just to let you know, we are recording this session. If you don't want your face to appear in a little box at the top in the recording, then you're better off turning your camera off. So we will have this session available for others afterwards. Now, the title of this talk is Eating for Energy. Let me get that right. Eating for Energy, Beating the Afternoon Slump. I'm already tired, as you can tell. The presentation this afternoon is by Sophie Higgins. Now, just a little something on Sophie before I introduce her. Sophie is a registered nutritional therapist and holistic health coach, specializing in digestive health and corporate well-being. She's a co-founder and director of Quest Day Collective, an organization that creates bespoke and specifically tailored wellness programs for organizations and their people. So we're very fortunate to have Sophie with us to do this presentation. So I'm going to hand you now over to Sophie. And then we'll have some questions at the end.
Well, thank you, Tom. And thank you for you guys for being here this afternoon. I know it's the end of a working day and I know you're all really busy, as Tom said. So thank you for taking the time to join us. As Tom said, if any questions pop into your mind as we go through the talk, feel free to pop them in the chat box and we will come to them at the end. And I hope you find this useful. It's a topic that I'm really, really passionate about. It's something that is really prevalent and poignant, I think more so now than ever. It's a subject that nearly everyone I talk to, whether that be within an organization or if it's a private client, can relate to. I know that I definitely, can relate to it myself as well. Come from a corporate background, and this was the afternoon slump and kind of inconsistent energy levels was a real big problem for me. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. So hopefully you can all see that. So I just wanted to make the point as well. I mean, I don't really know where you're currently working at the moment. So whether you've gone back into the office, whether you're working from home, it might be a mix of the two of those. And when I started doing this talk quite a few years ago now, it was face-to-face in an office environment in front of people. And it was predominantly, how we can keep energy levels consistent whilst at work within an office environment. And that is still, really, really important. But what I'm finding is that because of a lot of people are still working from home, they might be making that transition and shift back into the office gradually, kind of over the next few months, 6 months to a year. What I'm finding is that perhaps this is even more important and more of an issue when people are working from home and we are maybe working near our kitchen. We have got convenience foods really near to us that we can just grab. We are not necessarily getting up from our tables whilst we're working. We're at home, we're comfortable. There's not really any need to get up and walk to meetings, or we don't have that commute. And then when you couple that as well with maybe a little bit of just lethargy, demotivation about the kind of the time that we're living in and what we've all been going through, it can make this subject energy levels, how we keep them consistent, even more challenging. So I'm finding that more now than ever, it's really important that we understand this and we get on top of it how we can and in as healthy a way as possible. So as Tom said, I'm a registered nutritional therapist specializing in digestive health and corporate well-being. I'm based in Margate, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Co-founder and director of Quest Day Collective. And as Tom said as well, this is an organization that me and my business partner, John, set up. And we deliver really bespoke, tailored and holistic wellness programs to organizations for their people. And I'm really passionate about empowering organizations and their people, importantly, to really foster shifts that promote, enhance and maintain overall physical, mental and emotional wellness, and which contribute to a really positive, healthy and happy workplace culture. So just before I move on, why are we talking about energy levels in such an important way today? So for me, figuring out how we balance our energy and the things, the nutrients, the foods, the drinks that we use to fuel ourselves throughout the day is pretty fundamental and foundational to how all of our other body systems work. So when it comes to energy levels, when it comes to what's happening on a physiological and biochemical and biological level internally within the body, what's going on there has an impact to not only affect our short-term health, but our long-term overall health as well. So when we look at and when we talk about our energy levels on a kind of day-to-day perspective and kind of where we have low energy and where we have high energy, it's not just about our energy levels day to day. It really is about what impact is inconsistent energy levels going to have potentially on our long-term overall health and well-being. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I move through the slides. So what are we going to cover this afternoon? So why corporate nutrition? Why wellness for organizations and their people? So I'm just going to talk really briefly about my journey into this, from seeing clients one-to-one and then moving into the corporate well-being field. The importance of nutrition and well-being at work, why it's so important, why consuming the right things for energy is important and fundamental. And then lastly, what kinds of nutrients and foods should we be considering when it comes to balancing, maintaining and sustaining our energy levels throughout the day. So from morning until when we go to bed at night. So I started seeing clients one-to-one. I've been a nutritional therapist now for about 5 years. I started practicing in London. I had my own clinic in Bank, which is right in the heart of the city. So very, very corporate. And my clients, they all came to me with their own individual concerns. But the bigger picture of what people were telling me were that they were pretty much experiencing the same things when it came to symptoms. And like I say, you know, these individuals were 90% from very, very corporate working environments. However, I'm still seeing these things rear their heads consistently, especially as we're going through what we're going through now. You know, there is added stress. There's lots of additional factors at play now, which are having an impact on people's health and well-being. So stressful working environment, I was hearing that all the time from my one-to-one clients. They were talking about the office environment, but now, you know, with clients, it might be their home. Their home working environment is stressful. They might be going into the office 2-3 days a week. That might be stressful for them. Perhaps poor sleep, long hours. I'm definitely seeing this at the moment, especially with people working from home. So getting up, sitting down at the computer and not leaving really that area until late at night. Constantly on the go. And I mean constantly on the go here, physically, mentally and emotionally. Finding it hard to switch off. And this means, you know, in the evening, when you've put your work to one side and you sit down on the sofa and you're, you know, it's your chill time, mentally not being able to switch off. So kind of feeling that tired but wired feeling. Perhaps moderate to high alcohol intake, a high intake of convenience and processed foods, consistently high stress levels, perhaps working through lunch or eating lunch at your desk. And I'm seeing this with a lot of my clients at the moment, working from home and with breakfast as well, and even dinner. Perhaps high caffeine intake to boost energy, perhaps high sugar intake to boost energy, and then an overarching feeling of fatigue, lethargy, and just general low energy. And it was really this sort of bigger picture that I was seeing from my one-to-one clients in London that made me think that, you know, perhaps there really isn't enough within organizations in terms of awareness, in terms of education, and in terms of knowledge about what people can do to really make positive changes in this area and sustain their energy levels in a really healthy way. So I thought there needed to be more kind of at an organizational ground level. So that's where I made the shift into corporate well-being. That's predominantly what I do now. So why is good nutrition whilst working so important? So cognitive health. So good nutrition at work, optimal nutrition at work, super, super important for our brain health. So our brain is an organ like any other organ in the body, and it needs feeding. It needs feeding with appropriate energy and the kind of energy that is going to allow it to function well. And if we're not intaking the right sorts of nutrients and energy, then our brain is not going to be functioning at our best. And we might see sort of a negative impact at work in terms of our workload, how well we're focusing, our concentration levels, impaired memory, short-term and long-term. Perhaps a negative impact on the ability to multitask, a negative impact on our mood, maybe. You know, nutrition has a real potential to affect how well our brain functions. So it's super, super important that we are giving our brain that big, big muscle that does so much the right sorts of nutrition. So digestive health. Good nutrition at work is so important for an optimally functioning digestive system. Now, our digestive system is pretty much the kind of the baseline. So how well our digestive system is working kind of determines how well all of our other body systems are working. So if we've got an impaired digestive system, if it's not functioning as well as it could be, if we're seeing things like really common IBS symptoms regularly, day to day, this is going to have an impact again on our cognitive health, on our immune system health, on our reproductive health, on our adrenal health and our endocrine health. So it's super, super important that we have a good functioning digestive system to ensure that we overall as a human being are functioning well. And the thing is here that a lot of the things that we can get caught up in and that we may do whilst we're in a working environment, unfortunately, have the potential to really negatively impact our digestion. So things like eating while we're stressed, so not really taking the time out to move away from computer screens, be in a really nice, relaxed, chilled environment, be mindful about what we're eating, taking the time to chew our food properly. Perhaps eating on the go. You know, this comes into play when we're maybe going back into the office. So eating breakfast on our commute or nipping out at lunch to get something to eat from the shop and eating it on our way back to the office. Again, this is also linked to eating while stressed. Potentially high sugar, those high convenience foods, those high processed foods. Sugar is essentially, I mean, the digestive system is another talk in itself. There's so much to cover, but essentially sugar is the enemy of the gut and the gut lining. So if we are consistently eating high sugar foods, it's likely going to impair our digestive lining and therefore impair our digestive system overall. Potentially high trans fats, again, linked to those processed foods. High trans fats are those sort of bad fats in inverted commas. Really not great for the digestive system. Perhaps low water intake. We all know how easy it is to, not keep ourselves hydrated throughout the day. Really impacts our digestive system and the flow of our digestion. Those IBS symptoms, so bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get my squeaky toy off my puppy. So as you all heard, I've got my 6-month puppy with me who I was hoping would be nice and chilled throughout this talk, but unfortunately isn't. So hopefully you can all hear me a bit better now without constant squeaking. So there's classic IBS symptoms, so bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, abdominal discomfort. And unfortunately, these IBS symptoms are so common now that people just think that they're normal, and that people think that, you know, that's just how we function, that's just how our digestive system is, and, you know, we don't really do anything about it. So being really mindful of those IBS type symptoms, fatigue and low energy. This is what's caused by an impaired digestive system, so fatigue and low energy. And then we want to move on to our immune health. So our immune health is a really big one at the moment. You know, we all want to make sure, especially now that we are doing what we can to boost our immune health, taking the nutrients that we need to make sure we have a really well-functioning immune system. If we are not getting good nutrition on a day-to-day basis whilst we're working, then our immune system is going to be compromised. Also worth remembering here, so just linking it back to digestive health, that 70 to 80% of our immune system actually resides in our gut, in our digestive system. So if our digestion is compromised and not functioning as well as it could be, then our immune system is going to be compromised. And when we think of our immune health, you know, we can think about colds, flus, viruses. And if we kind of link that to the office, you know, how often do we pick up colds, flus, and viruses? How many days off work are people having due to these really easily picked up viruses and colds and flus? And then how long are we taking to recover? So how many days in total are people taking off work due to impaired immune health? This can all be sorted out by good nutrition at work and really healthy, consistent energy levels. So making sure that we have really healthy, consistent energy levels day to day is not only important to ensure that we are focused and productive, can multitask, we're concentrating, and we do the job to the best of our ability, but it is essential for our overall long-term health. So I've got a quick poll for you all now, if you wouldn't mind just getting involved, answering a few questions. I think Tom is going to get the poll up on the screen now for you guys to have a look at and get in there with your answers. And this should be shared with everyone as well. So we should be able to see kind of what the general consensus here is with the answers. And hopefully we'll get a good picture of kind of how everyone is feeling in terms of their own energy levels throughout each day. So if you guys wouldn't mind, Tom, feel free to fill it in as well. And the last two questions here. So number 5, do you have a burst of energy in the evening? And number 6, do you ever feel wired but tired? These two questions, you know, they might not seem that kind of relatable to just energy and what we're using to fuel our energy throughout the day in terms of our work, but they are related to stress levels and something called cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which is intimately connected to our energy levels and how we fuel ourselves. And I will come on to explain a little bit more about those last two questions as I go through the presentation. So let's have a look. So at the moment, as you could all see, we've got 100% experience fluctuating energy throughout the day. All right, we've got 80% having an energy dip in the afternoon, 83%, yeah, really, really common. It also might be common as well to experience, you know, we all hear of like 11s as well, so getting that sort of 11, half 11 dip in the morning as well, so that might be you rather than the energy dip in the afternoon. And then what do you use to increase energy and overcome energy dips? Okay, so not that many sugar, which is great. We've got 46% caffeine, and then we've got 46% both sugar and caffeine. All right, and I'm going to explain about what sugar and caffeine do specifically in the body and why they're maybe not the best things to refuel ourselves with. Do you regularly skip breakfast? 54%, 46%, so kind of a pretty even kill there. And then do you have a burst of energy in the evening? 54%. Do you ever feel wired but tired? Yep, 85%. So that wired but tired feeling is when you're relaxing, physically you're relaxing, you feel quite chilled, you're not working, it's kind of the end of the day or maybe at the weekend, but you can't switch it off. You might even feel a little bit jittery, you know, that real wired feeling, that fight or flight response. You might have heard it referred to as really, really common. And I'm going to talk about cortisol and what that might mean in terms of our energy levels a bit later on. So, general consensus here is that, the majority are experiencing those energy dips throughout the day. So let's have a little look about how we can resolve those energy dips and energy fluctuations. So blood sugar regulation. So when we talk about energy levels, we are talking about blood sugar regulation. Our blood sugar is directly correlated and linked to our energy levels. So our energy levels are determined by how much sugar we have in the blood. And when our blood sugar levels are chronically dysregulated and mismanaged, so this might look like kind of up and down energy all day. This might look like really low energy in the morning, really high energy in the evening. Basically, when you don't feel like your energy is consistent and maintained at a balanced level. So when blood sugar is chronically dysregulated, it can lead to various health conditions later on down the line. And when I talk about chronically, I'm talking here about over a long period of time. So a lot of the clients I see have been in a pattern of dysregulated and mismanaged blood sugar for years. Okay, it's been sort of a lifestyle, a way of life, and they haven't kind of had the knowledge or the awareness to seek out help or to kind of question as to whether that's the healthiest sort of lifestyle to be in when it comes to their energy levels and how they're feeling in terms of fatigue and feeling energized. Now, when we are in this pattern of mismanaged and dysregulated blood sugar for years, and I do mean years, I'm not necessarily saying that, everyone who just gets a 3 p.m. dip is going to experience these health conditions here. It is when we just don't do anything about it and we're in this way for a long, long time. So if we are in that state for a long time, we might see things like insulin resistance. I'm going to come onto that a little bit later on and explain exactly what that is. Type 2 diabetes. I'm sure you've all heard of type 2 diabetes. We're in a bit of a kind of pandemic with type 2 diabetes at the moment. It's really, really common. Unfortunately, it's becoming common in children as well, and normally purely related to diets and not fueling oneself efficiently or healthily. Metabolic syndrome. So for those of you that are not sure what metabolic syndrome is, so metabolic syndrome refers to a collection of different things. So metabolic syndrome is high lipids, high fats in the blood, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and high blood sugar. And these five, as you can tell, that's a kind of a mix of some not very nice things. And these 5 things together collectively are referred to as metabolic syndrome. And this is generally the precursor to full-blown type 2 diabetes. And it's what clinicians will kind of test first and pick up on normally before someone is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So that's a kind of a really early warning sign. Adrenal fatigue. I will explain this in a bit more detail later on as well. So essentially when your adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, which help to regulate blood sugar and cortisol, one of our stress hormones, it's when our adrenal glands become so fatigued that they basically pack up and don't function anymore. And cardiac issues. So just something to be aware of that, like I said at the beginning, this isn't just about how we feel day to day in terms of our energy. This is about if you do feel like that day to day and you get those energy dips, it's about getting on top of it now and thinking about what we can do to prevent potentially some of these conditions later on down the line. So let's have a little think about sugar. So sugar, blood sugar, directly correlated to our energy levels. When I'm talking about sugar here, I am referring to refined sugar, also sometimes known as simple sugar, and it's that man-made sugar that we all know of, we're all aware of. It's that man-made processed sugar that we find in a lot of refined and processed foods. And it's called a simple sugar because its molecular structure is very, very simple, as the name suggests. So it's just one molecule big. So the reason that the body likes sugar as an energy source is because it's only one molecule big, and it means that the body can use it really, really quickly. It's only one molecule. It doesn't have to do much with it. It just burns through it super quick. So that's why, if I use the example of young children, if young children have a lot of sweets, a lot of sugary things or soft drinks, we can physically see that they are hyper really, really quickly from that sugar. And that's because, and we know how that feels in ourselves as well if we have something really sugary. And that's because you intake the sugar, the body uses it super, super quickly. And within a few minutes, even almost immediately, you will get that sugar spike, which just boosts our energy super, super quick. So we get that sugar spike, we feel that burst of energy, we feel better, we're out of our energy dip. But the problem is, if we've used simple sugar to get that energy spike and that energy kind of pick me up, unfortunately, because it is a simple sugar, we then crash really, really quickly as well within minutes. And when we crash, what does the body crave? Well, the body knows from that previous experience that the one thing that it can use really, really quickly to get us out of that really awfully feeling horrible energy dip that we are in is to have some more sugar. So that is why we crave it, because the body knows that it can use it really quickly. So I hope that makes sense in terms of being able to see how we can kind of end up on that roller coaster ride of peaking and troughing, of spiking blood sugar really quickly and then it crashing. So that's simple sugar, one molecule big. That's why we crave it. And then as you can see there on the screen, so I've just got insulin written in red there. So the reason why we get that energy crash so quickly is because when we spike our blood with sugar really quickly with simple sugar, the body reacts to it as a sort of stressful event. It can tell, the brain communicates with the nervous system, with our adrenal glands, and it knows that we have got a really high level, too much sugar in our bloodstream. Insulin is a hormone that also speaks to the rest of the body, so the brain, the nervous system, the adrenal glands, and its job is to come in to the blood when we get the sugar spike and to get all of the blood as much as possible, so the sugar, out of the blood and into the cells as quickly as possible. And it does that super, super, super quickly. So you've got insulin coming in on a response of blood sugar spiking, and then we've got that blood sugar crash once insulin has got the majority, as much as it can, out of the bloodstream and into the cells. So we've got that sugar crash, which then equals another energy dip, which then equals the body craving more sugar for that quick energy source. So cortisol, I mentioned this a minute ago when we kind of looked at the questions in the poll. So why am I talking about cortisol in relation to blood sugar? Because it is intimately connected to our blood sugar. It's intimately connected to insulin. It's intimately connected to the whole system of our adrenal glands and our energy levels, and how the body uses the fuel that we give it to either increase or calm ourselves. So cortisol is a stress hormone. So notice the word stress. Cortisol is brilliant when we need to get out of a stressful situation quickly. It's a healthy thing. Without cortisol, we wouldn't function as we need to function. Unfortunately, cortisol should only be released and is kind of only really healthy in very short bursts in response to stress. So, if we think of an example of, way back when in hunter-gatherer times, when we are hunting for our food, we are gathering our food, but out and about while we're doing that, there's imminent danger around every corner. It might be a tiger or a lion that we need to run away from, that's potentially going to steal our food. So we need to get out of that stressful situation super, super quick, really quick. Otherwise, we lose our food, we might die. It's a survival mechanism. So cortisol is a survival hormone. So what would happen in that situation is we would see the stressful event, the thing that we need to get away from. Cortisol would kick in, our pupils would dilate, our blood vessels would stretch so that our blood pumps quick around our body. And then we'd get the hell out of there. That, like, every other body system would shut down because that's not important. What we need to do is just run and get out of that situation. So cortisol would spike, we'd get out of that situation, we'd get to safety, and then cortisol would drop. And we'd get to a nice even keel again. Then our blood sugar would balance out, our energy would balance out, and our cortisol and adrenaline would drop. What happens nowadays, unfortunately, especially in the Western world, is that a lot of us are stressed consistently. And we don't really give ourselves the time, or we don't really know how to give ourselves the time effectively to reduce that stress or manage that stress. And whether we know it or not, we might not even be aware of it. We are consistently in this kind of high level wired state of alert. So that fight or flight response, essentially. And when we're in that state consistently, instead of cortisol just being kind of synthesized from the adrenal glands and released into the bloodstream just in short bursts every now and then, we've got cortisol pumping around the body. We've got our adrenal glands on overtime, working to synthesize cortisol consistently. It has no downtime. The adrenal glands have no downtime. So we're kept in this really wired state of high alert, fight or flight. Now, the reason this is so intimately connected to our energy levels and our blood sugar is that cortisol pumping around the body drives high blood sugar. It drives high energy. So if we've already got quite a high blood sugar, and then we've got those sugar dips, and we've got that fluctuating energy, and then we add into the mix this consistently stressed states, and we've got cortisol pumping around the body, it's going to be really, really difficult to get off that roller coaster ride of inconsistent energy. So cortisol drives high blood sugar. It keeps that process going. So continuously high cortisol in response to continuously high stress is dangerous. Fight or flight dominance, high blood sugar, inconsistent energy levels. So blood sugar and cortisol. So this is just sort of reiterating and demonstrating what I've just mentioned about high cortisol driving fluctuating blood sugar. They're intimately connected. And the other thing is this works the other way around as well, vice versa. So fluctuating blood sugar also drives high cortisol. So you've got the two kind of going simultaneously at very, very high levels. And once that's the sort of picture that you're in, it becomes really, really difficult to get off that. And then plus the body releases more cortisol in response to a sugar crash. So when we have these consistent sugar dips, these sugar crashes, the body sees that as a stressful event. And what does the body do in regards to a stressful event? In response, it pumps out more cortisol. Really hard to get off that kind of roller coaster, peaking and troughing when we've got these two systems on high alert. So with this as well, I just want to explain a little bit about insulin resistance. So when we have that high cortisol and when we have that high blood sugar going on, and we've got insulin coming into the bloodstream to ferry out all of the sugar into the cells, this is when we can become insulin resistant. So insulin is a hormone. It communicates with and to all of the other cells in the body. But when insulin is asked constantly, time and time again, to come into the bloodstream and get the sugar out, and then it's asked again to come into the bloodstream and get the sugar out, and it has no downtime, it starts to dampen down its ability to listen to the body, and it starts to become ineffective. That's when we get insulin resistance. So it's when insulin loses its ability to communicate well as a hormone. So caffeine. So one of the things that, a lot of people use to boost their energy. And I'm not saying don't have coffee. I love, a coffee in the morning. But what I'm saying is if we are predominantly using caffeine purely throughout the day, from morning until afternoon, sometimes even into the evening, to keep our energy level high, to keep us awake, to keep us functioning at work, then we might need to take a little look at that. So, I see clients that, drink up to 10 coffees per day. And it's so difficult because you've got this picture of, the high cortisol. They're, in a really stressed state, an anxious state anyway, and they've got the really fluctuating blood sugar and the energy highs and the energy dips. And then we've got all of this caffeine into the mix, and you've got cortisol driving the high blood sugar and the high blood sugar driving the cortisol. We then add caffeine into the mix. It can be a really dangerous picture. And once, caffeine is a drug, caffeine is a stimulant. It's really easy to get hooked on caffeine. And if we're in that state and we are relying on it to function, it can be really, really tricky to then cut that caffeine down because we're so reliant on it. Our cells, our brain is so reliant on it. So the thing with caffeine is it is a drug, and it works directly on our poor old adrenal glands, which are already working overtime, pumping out the cortisol to keep us in this state of alert, ready to flee from danger that never really is there. So it signals the release of more cortisol. So we add caffeine into the mix, this stimulant. It works on the adrenal glands, it communicates to the adrenal glands, and we've got more cortisol being pumped out into the mix. We've therefore got more fluctuating blood sugar going on. And if you're already, like I was saying about this particular client, if you are already quite stressed, if you're already quite an anxious person, caffeine can exacerbate anxiety and stress. So it's a really tricky picture of events to get kind of caught up in, because once you are, it can be really, really difficult to get off. So then we've just got this bigger picture. We've got an energy crash. We've got the high sugar intake and the fluctuating blood sugar. We've got the blood sugar spiking, and we've got the blood sugar crashing. And when we think of this day to day, and in terms of the afternoon dip, it becomes really easy to see how when we reach sort of 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, our bodies just saying, literally have no more energy to keep going at all. So, we get up in the morning, we might be really stressed thinking about work. We have a coffee, we have a pastry, or we miss breakfast altogether, and our blood sugar is really high because we're just having caffeine. It's no wonder we then eat, we might then eat lunch at our desk or not have a proper lunch. We might just have biscuits or, some convenience processed foods. It's no wonder then by, the afternoon, 3, 4 o'clock, that it's really difficult to function in terms of our energy. It's no wonder that we are getting an energy crash around that time. Our bodies just simply do not have the resources to keep going sufficiently and healthily. So the afternoon slump is not just related to what we have eaten in the afternoon. It is related to everything we have consumed during the day so far and how we fueled ourselves from morning until that point in the afternoon. It's also related to how we fuel ourselves from that point in the afternoon. So what we have in the evening, what are we drinking before we go to bed? That then has an impact on how we feel in the morning and how our energy levels are when we get up, which then has an impact on our energy for the rest of the day as well. So we need to look at breakfast, we need to look at lunch, the types of snacks that we're having during our work time, that we're taking to the office, and we need to look at the fluids we're consuming and how well we're hydrated. So when it comes to breakfast, what are the sorts of things that we should be looking to consume in order to sustain our energy and to make sure that we have got sufficient energy to keep us going really balanced throughout the rest of the day? So complex carbohydrates. So as the name suggests, this is the opposite carbohydrate to simple sugar. So a carbohydrate is a sugar. So the sugar that spikes our blood really quickly and then gives us that energy dip, that was a simple sugar. These carbohydrates are complex carbohydrates. So as the name suggests, complex carbohydrates molecular structure are really complex. They're complicated. This means that the body doesn't burn through a complex carbohydrate really quickly. It has to do it more slowly because there's more matter to burn through and break down and metabolize within the body. So it takes a lot longer for sugar from these complex carbohydrates to release into the bloodstream, which almost means we get like this drip feed effect of energy. So complex carbohydrates enables our energy to be quite consistent and to just keep us going nicely up until lunchtime. So without that sugar spike and without that sugar crash. So steady supply of slow release energy. So what are some of the things that we can have for breakfast that contain these really healthy complex carbohydrates. So things like oats, things like quinoa porridge, buckwheat porridge, fibrous veg. Fibrous veg is great. You can put it into an omelette, or if you have smoothies at home, really convenient way of just tucking some handfuls of veg, spinach, kale, broccoli, those sorts of things into your smoothie. And whole grain breads, making the choice to switch from that kind of white sliced sugar rich bread to the whole grain complex carbohydrate bread. Again, things like sourdough bread, spelt bread, and rye bread, really good options. You also want to have a really nice healthy source of protein with breakfast. So I want you to think of protein when it comes to energy and blood sugar as the master blood sugar regulator. So protein as a macronutrient works to reduce sugar cravings and helps to keep us fuller for longer. So it will help to reduce those cravings for that simple, high energy sugar. So that man-made refined sugar. So some really healthy options for protein at breakfast are things like eggs, nuts, seeds, some nut butter, so peanut butter, almond butter, beans, really high in protein. Protein powder. Protein powder is great. I get, a lot of clients who are quite wary of protein powder and just, are kind of associating it with the gym and working out and things like that. But, a scoop of protein powder in a smoothie is one portion, 20 grams of protein in a smoothie is a really nice way to set you up in terms of, your blood sugar regulator in the morning. Things like spirulina, chlorella, and chia seeds. So again, these are all really good things that you can put into like a pancake mix, porridge, or smoothies. You'll often see spirulina, chlorella, and chia seeds referred to as superfoods. I don't really like the term superfood. But they are super, super high in protein. So if you are looking to get more protein into your breakfast and you have something like a smoothie or are making pancakes or, want to put it in your porridge or overnight oats, these sorts of things are really, really great. You only generally need a teaspoon of each of them. And then you also want to be ensuring that you have a really nice portion of healthy fats with your breakfast. So healthy fats balance cortisol, regulate blood sugar, they kickstart the metabolism, and they are the best source of brain food. So this is what our brain really, really needs to function well, is healthy fats. Now, fats have unfortunately kind of gotten a really bad press over the years, and unfortunately, we were made to think that fat equals fats. It doesn't. Yes, there are bad fats like those trans fats and really processed, fried foods, those sorts of things. But we need healthy fats in order to function properly. Every one of our organs, every one of our cells needs a really good supply of healthy fats. And actually, healthy fats kickstart our metabolism. So they do the opposite of making us gain weight. They make us burn fat more quickly. So, really good sources of healthy fats you can include in your breakfast, things like avocado, again, your nuts and your seeds and your nut butters. Yogurt is a really good source of healthy fat. Just make sure it's something like a Greek yogurt or maybe a coconut yogurt, trying to avoid fruit yogurts, which tend to be quite high in syrups and sugar. And then things like eggs. Eggs are a great source of protein and healthy fat, salmon, flax seeds, chia seeds, and coconut oil. And then just to be mindful of what you're having in your lunch. We want to have, the same macronutrients, the same sort of ratios. We want a nice amount of complex carbohydrates. We want a really nice amount of protein, and we want a nice amount of healthy fat. So complex carbohydrates, things that you might, include in your lunch options are brown rice, quinoa, buckwheat, and then things like your root vegetables. So things like sweet potato, squash, and your fibrous veg again. Protein, eggs, quinoa, lean meat, and fish. And then your lentils, beans, and legumes, super, super high in protein. Healthy fats, your oily fish, really, really good. So things like mackerel, salmon, avocado, eggs, nuts, and olive oil is great for drizzling. And then I always say to my clients as well, try and eat the rainbow. When it comes to, fruits and vegetables, try and get in as much color as possible. It's actually the color pigments in fruits and veg that contain all of the really good nutrients, the vitamins and the minerals. So aim for as much variety and vibrancy, lots of different colors on your plate as possible. And then snacks. So this is always this is where a lot of my clients feel that they trip up, because they want that really quick energy source. So they reach for the biscuits, the cakes, the crisps, those sorts of things, which are really easy and convenient. And it's just about being mindful on how you can stock up on these healthy snacks and have them with you, have some in the office. Again, we want protein and healthy fat to make up the majority of our snacks. So remember, protein, blood sugar regulator, keeps us fuller for longer and reduces those sugar cravings. And avoid those sugary, high saturated, those trans fats, processed snacks. So what are some examples of healthy snack choices? Again, you've got your nuts and seeds, things like hummus, so good quality hummus with veg sticks. You can have carrot, cucumber, or something like celery here. Again, yogurt, natural Greek or coconut. You can add nut seeds and berries. Boiled eggs, really great, high in protein, high in healthy fat. Oat cakes or rice cakes with nut butter, protein-based energy ball or protein-based energy bar. So you can get some really great ones, sort of, those energy bars, energy balls. I would just say, make sure you always check how much sugar is contained in these. If you can, experiment with making your own so that you know exactly what goes in it. But there are a lot of energy balls and energy bars that are branded as really healthy, but then when you look at the sugar content and the carbohydrate content on the back, they contain majority sugar. So just be aware, if you can make your own, make your own. And then vegetable-based smoothies. Just want to make a point about smoothies. I get a lot of clients come to me that say, they have lots of really, really healthy smoothies, jam-packed with fruits and not much else. Just to be aware that fruit still contains sugar. It's fructose. It's not that simple sugar that I was talking about, but it is still a very concentrated sugar. And if you have a lot of fruit all at once, it will have a very similar effect on the body and our energy levels. I'm not saying don't eat fruit. I'm just saying perhaps limit the amount of fruit, the portions, to maybe just, 1 or 2 per day. You've got all of the fiber and the other nutrients in there packaged in the fruit as well, which is great. But if you're having a smoothie that is just made up of fruit, it's going to have that spiking effect on the blood sugar. So wherever you're having a smoothie, make sure it contains a nice amount of vegetables, those leafy greens, things like beetroot, avocado. Make sure you've got your protein in there and your healthy fat. And then just finally coming on to the importance of hydration. So drinking water, it's one of the quickest ways that we can boost our energy levels. And I'm sure we all know that feeling when we're dehydrated, we feel a little bit groggy, a little bit tired, maybe difficult to concentrate. Make sure you're staying hydrated. So we're 60% water. We are more water than anything else, which means it's super, super important that we are replenishing our water stores appropriately. So water is essential to ensure the proper functioning of all of our body systems. When we are dehydrated, the flow of oxygen to our brain is affected, giving us that groggy feeling, maybe making it difficult to look at our computer screens, to concentrate well. When we feel like that, because we're feeling quite low in energy and we're aware of it, we want to just reach for those sugar foods. Keep your water near you and reach for the water instead. It's one of the quickest ways to boost energy. When we are hydrated, we are more focused, we concentrate better, and we're overall more productive. So we should be drinking around 1.5 to 2 litres of water per day. If you do have a water filter, clean filtered water is better, but I know this isn't available for everyone. So just make sure that you're getting your water content in, filtered or not. If you exercise a lot and you lose a lot of water through sweating, make sure you up that. So you might be looking at more kind of 2.5 to 3 litres per day. Herbal teas are great for increasing water content. And, just keep a jug of water on your desk or water bottle, have it there in front of you so you can see it, to remind yourself to drink and hydrate. You can flavor the water, add some fruit, some mint, some lime, lemon, oranges, if you want to make it a little bit more interesting and add flavor. And what sorts of things should we be avoiding when it comes to fluids and drinks? So obviously drinks high in sugar, fizzy drinks, concentrated fruit juices really high in sugar, and those fruit-based smoothies that I was talking about, and squash really high in sugar. Drinks high in caffeine as well, obviously, so coffee, tea, caffeinated fizzy drinks. So you've kind of got the double whammy there with the caffeinated fizzy drinks. And just to be aware, I had a lot of clients say to me as well, I'm getting lots of water in the coffee and the tea that I drink. But just to be aware that caffeine is actually a diuretic. So it really doesn't matter how much water that you're having with your tea and your coffee. Caffeine has the opposite effect to hydrating us. It makes us lose water. It's a diuretic. So it actually has the effect of dehydrating us. So if you do have, quite a few coffees through the day, quite a few teas, see if you can swap 1 or 2 out to begin with. Maybe have some water, a vegetable-based smoothie, or see if you can just have a few more herbal teas in your day. All right, so that is pretty much whistle-stop tour of blood sugar balancing and energy levels. So there's a lot more to go into. There's a lot more depth, a lot more science behind all of this, but I hope that makes sense. I hope that's been useful, and I hope it's just given you a few pointers and tips and some positive guidance of things that you could kind of put into place, whether you're working from home, whether you're back in the office, of how to really sustain those energy levels and beat that afternoon dip. Tom, I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you. See if we've got any questions.
Thank you very much, Sophie. I enjoyed that. There was a lot of good reminders in that. Now, I know I mentioned this to you before. My wife is studying also to be a nutritional therapist. So it feels like I've just had an hour conversation with her, because she tells me very, very similar things, believe it or not. And I suppose what the I suppose the bit that I've kind of got out of it, really, and you kind of mentioned it at the end, with all this kind of advice and stuff, is that it's very much, I was kind of like picturing a mountain. You're kind of saying, this is what it looks like to the best place to be. But ultimately, I suppose, like you were kind of mentioning, if we can just kind of make some changes in that direction, because for me personally, the whole, insulin resistance, cortisol, sugar, that they've been uncomfortable bedfellows for me for years. And now I'm just making some improvements of trying to cut sugar out, trying to make some. So I suppose what we're saying is, but you're just making some small choices, small improvements where we can.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it is about taking those small, simple, gradual steps and changes, and making sure that it is practical and achievable, and that you find that if you try and kind of change everything and implement stuff that is just going to be so difficult to stick to a routine to, or make part of your daily habit because you're not used to it. If you try and do everything, it's going to be really tricky to stick to it. So, I always suggest cut down 1 coffee. Don't cut them all out, because that's going to be too much. Just cut down 1, switch to 1 herbal tea. Just increasing water alone to 2 liters. If you're only having a couple of glasses, will have a huge impact on energy levels, your gut health, your immune health, everything, how you think at work, your productivity. So it is really about making those simple, sustainable changes. And then once they're in place, they're sorted, habits are in place, you can then start to move on to other changes.
Yeah, excellent. Now we've got the opportunity for some questions. So if anyone has any questions, I know that I do have some questions. If you have some questions, if you'd like to put them in the chat function, I'll read them out, or you can raise your virtual hand. So while people are trying to work out if they have a question, Sophie, can I ask this question about vitamin D? I was kind of quite interested in vitamin D, also because I had heard that the vitamin D supplement was also somehow potentially correlated with a reduction in risk of COVID. Is that true? Or is that news to you? Have you heard anything like that?
No. there's a lot of research on a lot of different, lots of different vitamins and nutrients when it you might have heard of vitamin C as well. So there's been loads of research done about vitamin C having a really positive impact on kind of COVID. There's been lots of talk, lots of studies about vitamin D and being beneficial when it comes to COVID. I mean, all I would say is it's not a cure. It's not 100% going to stop you from getting it. It's not going, I can't say that it's going to work in that way, but it might help, and it will definitely help to boost your immune system function. So, we hear of vitamin D being super, super beneficial for musculoskeletal health, for bone health. And it absolutely is, because we need an appropriate level of vitamin D to be able to absorb the right amount of calcium we need for our bone health. But vitamin D, we now know as well, is super, super important for our immune health, and also really important for our cognitive health and our mood. And when it comes to vitamin D, I generally recommend that people take a vitamin D supplement during the winter, just because we don't really get the levels of sun. And even if we do, you're not going to go and stand out necessarily in the sun, with some skin exposed, arms exposed for 20 minutes, while it's snowing necessarily. So I generally recommend people take a supplement during the winter months. And it's, if you're concerned about vitamin D, it's never a bad idea to request a test from the GP and just check levels. And then for definite where your levels are at and how much you need to supplement by, if you do need to supplement.
Excellent. Now, this is an interesting question from Chloe. Is drinking Coke Zero better than drinking Diet Coke or Coke? Do you have a thought on the use of kind of diet fizzy drinks when it comes
I do, and I feel like Chloe might hate me after
how it is, Sophie. Say so, how it is.
I mean, I always try to recommend that, especially if you know that you are experiencing dysregulated blood sugar, and if you are getting energy dips throughout the day, and you're experiencing fluctuating energy, that's a pretty good sign that your blood sugar is a little bit all over the place. So that's a really good indication that there needs to be some blood sugar management and some balancing overall. And I generally recommend that, anyway, but if that is the picture, and that's the picture, to really try and stay away from the sort of reduced fat, the fat-free, the low fat, or the alternatives that brands often kind of say that they are healthier. The thing is, when we have like low fat and fat free and zero and all of those sorts of things, companies tend to add in lots of other man-made additives and flavorings and sweeteners to them, which, when we look at the amount of sugar in terms of grams, because it's not necessarily a carbohydrate, the amount will be lower. But actually what the body does with those additives, those flavorings and those sweeteners inside the body is pretty much the same, if not similar, to how it uses and processes sugar.
I had actually heard that as far as kind of insulin responses, that even the sweetness of aspartame on your tongue can still actually have an impact on your blood sugar, even though there's no sugar in it. Is that right?
Yeah, it is absolutely right. I mean, it's a great way to get the numbers down on labels in terms of sugars and carbohydrates. But and then you've just got to be mindful of as well of what is being added in there that is a man-made substance to replace the sweetener. And I generally say that it's better, especially with like whole foods, and especially foods that contain really healthy fats, and yogurts and, hummus and things like that, to always have the full fat version. Because it's generally the whole food, there's not been much else added to it. The body will use it in a much better way, a healthier way, than with a product that's had loads of other man-made kind of substances put in it.
Yeah. So to answer Chloe on the Coke Zero, Diet Coke, what we're saying, that lions and lionesses drink water.
Yeah, could frame it like that. It's probably not as bad as your general Coke, but it's not a healthy alternative.
Great. We've got another question here from Scott. Well, a couple of questions. Thoughts on supplements in general? Anything you would say best to take? And what is your guilty pleasure when you want a snack or a treat? That's a good question.
Oh, it's my guilty pleasure. I love this because because then I just feel it gives people permission to I just want permission to eat. So
I have Mars bars.
Yeah, I'm not going to say like loads of vodka and wine. And I like a good pizza, a good sourdough pizza on the weekend, definitely. And it is all about balance, I think. And if you get to a point where you have quite balanced blood sugar and you're not having those cravings anymore, those sugar cravings, your body then can recover from something like a pizza that's got some carbohydrate in it at the weekend far quicker, because it's already in a quite healthy state, than it would if you're kind of on that roller coaster ride of just energy up and energy down throughout the day. Yeah. So it won't have that kind of long lasting effect. And then what was the other question about supplements?
Yeah, just thoughts on supplements in general, best to take. Obviously we were talking about vitamin D, and then we kind of talked about vitamin C.
Yeah.
Multivitamin, would you recommend that or not?
Yeah, if you're definitely lacking in terms of fresh vegetable and fruit intake, a really good way to make sure you're getting lots of vitamins and nutrients is, that point about eat the rainbow. If you make sure that you're eating as many different colors of fruits and veg, predominantly veg, as possible, you're going to be getting a really good intake. But if you know that your diet is a little bit deficient and has been for a while in those sorts of fresh vegetables and foods that are in season, and it's maybe a bit heavy in the processed convenience foods, then yeah, a really good quality multivitamin probably wouldn't hurt. And a lot of my clients I recommend a probiotic for as well, especially if you experience those sort of classic IBS symptoms, that your gut health potentially isn't great, and probiotics are a fab for immune health as well, and for cognitive health, for everything really. If your gut function could be better, it might not be a bad thing to take a probiotic, as we know digestion is so important. Good digestion is so important for every other body system. So
yeah, well, yeah. I have had poor gut health for 15 years, but it's been much better taking a pro and a prebiotic.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last 4 months, and I felt a lot better in myself. Quick question then about talking about vitamins and stuff. I'd heard that for women on the pill, that sometimes vitamin B uptake can be an issue, which can then have an impact on mood. You had a kind of thought on that can be sometimes impact on like low moods or depression and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of a two-pronged question in terms of the pill and then in terms of B vitamins. I take it, I mean, being on the pill long term in itself can have a huge impact on mood health and cognitive health, and the pill, depending on what type of pill you're on, can affect the absorption of different types of nutrients, but being on the pill in general for a long period of time can affect the absorption of many different nutrients, and not just the absorption, but how your body uses different sorts of nutrients and vitamins and minerals. Vitamin B, yes, low levels can have a real impact on mood, especially sort of B12 and B5, which are really, really important for energy. And vitamin B12, vitamin B2 as well can have a real impact on mood and energy. And again, if our gut health is not great, we're not going to be absorbing as well the nutrients that we're getting from our food. So if you're really low in energy, if you know that your mood is quite low as well, it can be quite a good idea to take a vitamin B complex. That can be really good for upping energy, especially in the morning.
Yeah, no, I have heard that. So Sophie, thank you very much for your presentation, the time that you've given us today. Thank you, Laura and Lauren, for helping set that up, and thank you very much for everyone who's attended. Thank you for your attention. I hope you found it useful. I certainly have. There is this is a recorded session, so if you think there's someone else who'd appreciate some of these things, then there will be a copy. We'll probably host it on YouTube or Vimeo, what have you, and we might circulate the webinar. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Care,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
See you later, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, good.